after we turn it on. Thank you for coming. This is a really nice turnout. We hope we can provide some information for you, and we'll see what happens. There are a number of things on the table over there which you should take a look at. You may want to get a copy of something. One of them is something that looks like this, and this is our programs coming up for the rest of the year. So you can take one of these home, put that on your refrigerator and look at it and come to our programs. That's there. There is information about a boat tour that the Manlius Historical Society is having on September 9th, day after my birthday. If you're thinking of what to get me, that would be really nice. And it's an all-day cruise. It includes a couple of meals and some snacks, and goes up the Erie Canal. So you can take a look at that. For those people who are really interested in cemeteries and would like to kind of walk through before you get put there later, whatever, there are cemetery tours about once a month in the Oakwood Cemetery in Syracuse. And there's an indication, there's some papers on that. Some of these names I see who are leading these tours are people that I know, and I know they're going to do a really good job of telling you things, so you can take a look at that. And then coming up in September, our September meeting, we have Chuck D. Imperio coming back. This is a guy, he's been here before, good historian, he's a radio guy, he's on the radio in Oneonta. But he's a good historian. He writes books, he does research, tells a good story, and he's going to tell you in September that his book is called Upstate New York, History Happened Here. And he's going to tell you stories, 25 something, I don't know what it was, people, events, and whatever. Always a good thing. But this is not the first Monday in September, because that's Labor Day. And so we're not going to compete with Labor Day. This is going to be Monday, September 12th. So you can come and take a look at that. Coming up in October is a man named Jerry Antle, who has written about some people living here in this area. Well, with their permission, using their names, of course, but he's going to come. And maybe you're in some of his books. Who knows? Anyway, that's going to be in October. Again, take a look at this when you get over there. And so forth. Tonight, boy, this is different. We've had all kinds of programs, and this is really different. We have, again, Randy Vaas coming here, a DEC worker person. Are you retired now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, retired DEC person. And many of you have interest. Many of you have so maybe you've signed papers already for hydrofracking, and then you've heard some things you want to ask questions about. Well, he's got the answers, so did I go too far?
Maybe.
Maybe. Okay, this is Randy Vaas.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As Chuck said, my name is Randy Vaas. Give you a little bit background about myself. I was born in Casanova at the maternity home. I lived in Woodstock for approximately a year, and then my parents bought what is known as the old sawmill lot, 6 acres on Osborne Road. Of course, everybody sitting here doesn't know what Osborne Road is, because once Bob Harris became Justice of the Peace, it became Harris Road, and the house he lived in was the Osborne farm. And then, the ski center came along, and the road ended up being Tigenberg Road. I lived in Fabius until 1980, end of 82. Moved to Watertown because I wanted to try for a promotion, and in order to get a promotion when you work for the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, you never get to where you're working. So I went to Watertown then. I attended high school here, graduated, in the old school, which is right over here. I went to Albany for 2 years and transferred to Portland. My background is biology education, and I enjoyed my geology courses so much I went back to get a master's in geology. The only problem is that it had to be in education, so I have about 53 hours, 54 hours in geology courses out of Portland. I never did finish my master's degree because I was working on my thesis, and Sandy's grandmother, which happened to mine also, thought she'd help me out, and she moved all the bags that I had my samples in that I was working on, and they broke and mixed my samples up. And so they said, does the state of New York really care if I have a master's degree? And the answer was no, so they gave it up for the lost cause. Well, the reason why I got interested in hydrofracking is in one of my other jobs that I have. I'm a member of New York State Chapter of American Fisheries Society, and my first job at DEC was a fisheries biologist, and I'm chairman of the environmental committee of that group, and the people there felt that since hydrofracking was prevalent in the state of Pennsylvania, and the shale itself is and also in New York and other states, that I should keep track of things. So I've been going to meetings, reading what DEC has put out, put comments on the SGEIS that DEC is working on, and so I've tried to gain a little bit of knowledge, and I'd like to give you some of that knowledge tonight. I won't say it's going to be hopefully it's not too much of a dry presentation, but I want to start out with hydrofracking and its original definition. Its original definition dealt with water getting into cracks and rocks and freezing. Hydro meaning water, fracturing meaning split apart. So, in essence, the word hydrofracturing first took place stating that, in essence, frost weathering is a collective name for several mechanical weathering processes due by stresses, and those stresses were created by ice in cracks. So the frost would split the rocks apart. So that's our first level of hydrofracking. That's it. And they also called it cryofracking because cryo means cold, so we had cold fracturing of rocks. Then we come to one of the next definitions. This came along mainly because hydrofracturing was taking place in certain parts of the United States, and in essence, it's the process of making a rock under pressure by introducing water or other fluids to increase the permeability for oil, gas, and geothermal reservoirs. We have no geothermal reservoirs here, but they do in the West and in Hawaii, so they use this process. And what it does under pressure, it splits open what they call the bedding planes of a rock. And the bedding planes are as the material is settled down, they settle in a certain area, and they have a lineal area in them. So the hydrofracking takes place to separate that, and then they add sand and many other materials to that to keep those formations open so it's closed. It doesn't close, I should say. This is just an additional one which has been added to lately through Wikipedia. I know that at the top, so people know where I get my information from. This is a good definition. I think we get down to the second paragraph, and hydraulic fractures may be natural, man-made, are extended by internal fluid pressure, which opens the fracture and causes it to extend through the rock. Natural hydraulic fractures include igneous dikes, sills, and fracturing by ice as far as frost weathering goes. And it's noted that the last sentence that when you do hydrofracturing, the material that they put into that to make sure it doesn't close is propant, P-R-O-P-P-A-N-T. Another thing that hydrofracking is used for is to increase water flow in people's wells. This has been used for a number of years. people in this area may not have that much problem because you have some good glacial material here that you can get water from. But up where I live, you go down a foot and you're into a limestone bedrock. My neighbor to my left and my neighbor across the road both hydrofracked their wells to gain additional flow, and that's exactly what they did. They put water under pressure with some sand to drive the bedding planes apart in the limestone so the water could more freely flow to their wells. It was interesting. My neighbor across the road is an engineer, and he tried his own process of dropping dry ice down the well and then putting a cap on the well and trying to seal it, so as the dry ice went from a solid to a gas, he thought it would have enough pressure to open up the bedding planes in the rock itself, but that didn't work, so he had to have a specialist come in. And in essence, what they do, and no matter where they hydrofrack, is that they go down the borehole, the drill hole. Hydrofracking is a little bit different in gas because they use two casings, whereas your well is only one casing. And they put a rubber donut, and they inflate that rubber donut in your well casing. And then they pump pressures down through that donut. So the pressures in water itself, they use somewhere between 10 and 12,000 pounds per square inch. So there is a lot of pressure which is exerted in that well just by the fluid, because the fluid itself does not compress. I just want to bring this forward, this third paragraph, the hydrofracking equipment is used in a well natural gas field, consists of a slurry blender and one of the others under high pressure, which I just noted. And they use pressures up to 15,000 pounds in the process. Location of the fracturing along the length of the borehole can be controlled by inserting certain plugs, as I just mentioned previously, so that you can separate areas that you want to hydrofrack. As I said, the hydraulic fracking is used to increase or restore the rate at which fluids can flow. Now, gas is considered a fluid, so that they use water for the pressure. The interesting thing now, there is a company in Canada which is using something different in the process of hydrofracking, and they are using liquid propane gas. And they're injecting liquid propane gas into the well because they can compress that gas. It's liquefied. They pump it down the hole, and they also put with it propane so it'll separate the bedding planes. Then they can reclaim liquid propane, run it through the type of a scrubber to clean it back up, and then use it elsewhere. That hasn't been used yet in Pennsylvania. It's been used in some wells in Colorado, and I think they've used it on a few wells in Texas. One of the things I want to note there, since 1998, they've used what they call this unconventional natural gas production, because it's not like a regular natural gas production. Back in the 70s, Miller Brewery was building a facility in Fulton, New York. They needed both gas for their facility and for making cans and bottles. The gas they found was in Cayuga County, in the town of Throop and Brutus, Weedsport, in that area. There were a significant number of wells which were drilled at that time. So there was no hydrofracking, there were just vertical wells. These wells had significant production, and I think they're still producing today, not as high as they did previously. But in order to make these are all only verticals, and to make these wells more productive, my assumption is they've done some hydrofracking since that time. The key shale we want to talk about tonight, they have a promise for future development. It's called the Devonian Age rock. It's about 225 to 250 million years old, and it's called the Marcellus Shale. Now, question: does anybody know why the Marcellus Shale is called the Marcellus Shale? Yes, sir.
It was discovered, I think, in 1840s in Marcellus.
Absolutely correct. Whenever rock is named, it is where it was first seen by a person and given a name, usually of the township or the area that it is located. Now, many of you have been over to Tinker's Falls, right? Know where Tinker's Falls is? Okay, you go to Tinker's Falls and there is a capped rock that you notice the water coming over. That rock is called the Tully limestone because that rock was first seen and examined and written up in the town of Tully. We have names all over the place. We have Spafford, we have Skaneateles, Marcellus, Onondaga, Manlius. We have a number of names for formations, and I'll show these to you a little bit later in the presentation. The difference in the drilling now in the Marcellus Shale is that some time ago, someone, and it's not too long ago, came up with the ability of drilling vertical and then drilling horizontal from that point. Prior to that, you couldn't, if your bit got off as you were going down into a borehole, many times you lose that bit because it would get at an angle, and once it got into an angle, you would lose it. You try to fish it out, you may lose it. The process now, because of computerization, they're able to drill down, and most of Marcellus Shale is at least 3,000, Marcellus Shale is 3,000 feet below the surface. Once they get down to 3,000 feet below, they rotate that drill head, so the drill head will go in a horizontal direction, and then they can drill 2,000 to 3,000, sometimes in certain areas of the United States, they drill up to 5,000 feet horizontal. This is the type section of Marcellus Shale. It's not much to look at. It's a very black shale. It's thin bedded, means it has very thin layers in it. And the shale is what they call a very tight material. In other words, there's not very much porosity in the shale itself. And that's why they have to hydrofrack the Marcellus Shale in order to get gas out of it, because under normal drilling operations, you would get production of gas, but you wouldn't get very much. And by separating those bedding planes that I talked about, you get a lot more flow of gas from the well itself. This is just a picture of not all of them, but major gas shale basins in the United States. Marcellus, you can see, is here. The Antrim is in Michigan. New Albany is in Indiana and Illinois. And there's one down off the map when I tried to scan this and put it in. It's called the Barnett Shale. And the Barnett Shale was one of the first shales that they drilled vertically, then went horizontally, and they hydrofracked that. And that's been like 12 years now since that has taken place. This is a very interesting slide here because, well, picture, whatever you want to call it. I'm so used to giving presentation with slides, that's how old I am. But you can look at what the difference between the Barnett and the Marcellus and Fayetteville and the other ones they have in here. The square mile size of Marcellus is 95,000 square miles. The next one close to that is Lewis Basin of only 10,000 square miles. The depth of the Marcellus is between 4,000 and 8,500 feet deep. Thickness is between 50 and 200 feet, depending upon where you are in the Marcellus Shale. If you look at total organic carbon in it, you'll find out it's between 3 and 12%. You look at all the rest of them, and they're very, very low. That's why there's a great gas amount which is in the Marcellus Shale because of the organic carbon which is in the Marcellus Shale. They suggest that the well spacing be between 40 and 160 acres. The reserves are 262,500 trillion cubic feet, which is the largest amount of reserves that there is in anything they found in the United States so far. And the estimated gas production in million cubic feet per day per well is roughly 3,100, which is significant. The one thing about the drilling which is taking place in the Marcellus Shale is there's roughly 2,900 wells now which have been drilled in Pennsylvania. There has not been one dry well, which is significant because usually a minimum of 10, more like 15 to 20% of the wells, wherever you're drilling, come up of non-producing, which I call a dry well. And in this case, in the Marcellus, there hasn't yet been a well that didn't produce. This just gives a somewhat of a outline of the Marcellus Shale. This got cut off, I'm sorry about that, but it starts way up in Marcellus, which is not very far west of here. And it comes through Pennsylvania, West Virginia, there's some in Ohio, comes all the way into Virginia, and a little bitty tip in Tennessee. Now, as you go farther south, the deeper the bed is going to be, so much more drilling has to take place in that area. I talked before about the units of rocks which we have around here. Most of the rocks we have are in the Devonian period, 225 to 275 million years old. We are roughly in the middle Devonian. The upper part of the middle Devonian is the Tully limestone, which I just noted. If you've ever noticed the black shale, which is underneath up at Tinker's Falls, it is the Moscow shale. The shale which is above that is called the Geneseo shale, or Genesee shale, I mean. And then you have a whole bunch of Ludlowville, which is outside of Ithaca, New York. You have the Skaneateles, the Marcellus, the Onondaga. The Onondaga is a thick limestone. That's the major producer of products. Hanson has a huge quarry in the town of Manlius in the Whip. Manlius is below that. The Rondout is outside of Albany. Then you get down to the Akron, which you find outside of, or south of Rochester, Camillus, Syracuse, Vernon. So in essence, as I said before, you get the name of the unit of rock from where they first found it and typed it. Well, this is the picture I really wanted to show you. And I don't think I can move it. In essence, this is a regular well which has come down here, and what this is supposed to show is you have a well come down here, and it makes a bend right here, where it goes out of sight and comes over this direction to show you what directional drilling is. Let me just see if I can try something. Nope. Sorry about that. It's on the slide, it's just that the image is too large for the screen, but in essence, that's what I was hoping to show. The one thing which we're, that's interesting. Because let's see, I get to move back, let's see. Something is missing here. How do I go back? Can I go?
Try the left arrow.
Left arrow, okay. Okay, okay, good. hydrofracking, water is used in the process. Right now in Pennsylvania, they have the volume being used for hydrofracking now less than 1 million gallons. It was well over 1 million gallons when it first started. The positive thing which is taking place is that when the hydrofracking fluid comes out of the well, it is now going into a primary treatment plant immediately on site, which takes out all of the solids, separates any oils that are in it, so that you don't have this great mixture that you had that you pumped down the well. But in essence, about 99+% is water. And then this little arrow, which we see here, is in essence formed as is part of that acid. The acid which is known as sometimes, usually hydrochloric, in not in a strong solution. And then part of that is just a number of things. There's an inhibitor, a biological inhibitor in there, so you don't have bacteria or algae growing in it. You have a scale inhibitor, so you don't have buildup of scale on the inside of the pipe itself. You have iron control, so you don't have rusting taking place. And you have potassium chloride being used as part of the process to make the water flow easier through the system. These are the additives. Missing, but they've noted there's been at least 750 chemicals have been used throughout in the Barnett Shale and other shales. The major ones they're using now in Pennsylvania, I should say, there's about 10 different ones they have here. The top left is acid. Generally, it's hydrochloric acid. The biocides, is the second one, kill bacteria. The third one is a breaker. It facilitates a propant entry, clay stabilizer, the use of salts, corrosion inhibitor. What they use is methanol, which in essence is wood alcohol. Some people can use methanol burning in their cars if they've had them changed slightly. You then have friction reducers, which allows it to grow faster, and then you have a surfactant, which is a reduction so that the material can be moved easier. This in essence is just a rough, showing roughly exactly what I talked previously. There's a couple of things on it, but they're down below. So here is a drilling rig taken in Pennsylvania. Size that they use in the drilling rig that they use in the full site, depending upon the setup. Some of them are up to 5 acres. Generally, they're between 1 to 2 acres that they use. For setup, you have to have a pond to put all the drilling cuttings in. You have to have, before they went to this pre-treatment, you have to have a pond that would collect all the backflow from the well after they hydrofracked it. There's a significant amount of machinery which goes on this site. The biggest problem, and I'm going to talk about a little bit more in the end, is not so much the 2,900 wells which have been drilled, it's the pounding the town roads have taken for this large equipment. We got 40-ton equipment going over the road, and town roads aren't built for it. So we're going to talk a little bit about that at the end. This is a sample that Jim Riggio, Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania Municipal Authority, showed a sample of solid material he took out of his water supply filtering system. Mr. Riggio noted that there was some problems in certain type of material which is being made in his is chlorination of the water. What they are is trihalomethanes. Trihalomethanes, he said, were caused by water which was seeping from the well sites. But in reality, in talking with the health department, I got a couple other slides here. Trihalomethanes are produced when you douse, that means add chlorine to water that you have, which has high organic material. And in the fall, you have rotting leaves, which fall into the stream, and as the fall goes on, these leaves rot significantly, and that causes organic material to be in the water itself, so it causes a significant problem in this process. I just wanted to quickly go just a little bit on this. When they disinfect water, and that's what they do in essence when you dump chlorine into water, you're disinfecting it. And what happens is that the products formed are trihalomethanes, acetic acids, and another process you get some barium compounds in there, and you get some other compounds which aren't good. So they have to be very careful in the use of chlorine in streams that have high organic content. And we had some problems in one of the water supplies in Lewis County that the health department termed it non-potable because there was so much trihalomethanes being produced because of the water that they were the supply that they were using had so much organic material. And I just wanted to note when you douse with chlorine, you get a whole bunch of things which the health department really doesn't like. You get bromohydrins, you get trihalomethanes, halogen acid, acetic acid, you get some terrible things that you really don't want. So you have to try to you have to really filter that water before you get it in your system. You get as much out as you can. Now I want to go on to a couple cases which have made the news many times. The first one I want to look at is the one in Dimmock, Pennsylvania. Cabot Oil and Gas Corporation was fracking a well, and allegedly the methane came up from 3,500 feet below the surface and contaminated, I think it was 17 or 19 wells in Dimmock, Pennsylvania. The company said, well, it's interesting, we're 3,000 feet down, plus 3,000 feet plus down. Why you would get methane in just 19 houses of this hamlet, this small village? What Cabot finally did was that said, well, listen, we're not going to argue about the process. They were going to bring in a water line from Montrose, Pennsylvania. That was going to cost $1.5 million for 19 houses. It wasn't cost effective. The people where the line was going to go through was going to go through the middle of their yards, etc. Were up in arms about that. So what Cabot did, they settled with the state of Pennsylvania. They paid him a fine of $500,000, and they told everybody in the 19 families that were affected that they would pay them 2 times the assessed or appraised value. That appraised value would be if there was nothing wrong with the water supply in the house. So many people took the money. There's like a half a dozen people who stayed there. Cabot has to pay for a cleaner, which strips, removes the methane from the well itself, so you have no methane in the water whatsoever. There's a couple interesting things about this. Before I built my house in Watertown, I used to live across the road, and I used to turn on my water once in a while, my cold water, and I get a spurt out. And I couldn't understand, I get that it would blast a glass right out of your hand. And I go, what the heck is that? So I got talking to one of my friends, and they said, well, do you ever check to see if it's methane? And I go like, no, not really. And he said, well, you can hear it gurgling through the pipes, can't you? And I go, yeah. He said, well, next time you turn it on, you have the pipes gurgling, you know, have a lighter there to see if it'll ignite. And the interesting thing is, it did ignite. So I have, anything that has gas in it is probably 4,000 feet below me. And so little tiny cracks in the ground, this methane comes up through little cracks in the ground, and it got to my well. Well, this was an article in the Scranton Times Herald, I think it was. I first read the article, and I didn't print it out. I read the article, and there was the person interviewing a bunch of different people in the area, and they interviewed this one guy, and he said, well, you know, I don't know what all the commotion is about. I've lived here 37 years, and I've had methane in my well for those 37 years. He said, I got this little special valve that leads it off. And the next time I went in to print this article out, the two sentences that were in there were redacted. They just were not there anymore. So it was just kind of interesting. But anyway, Cabot has to give these people a secure, clean water supply for something like 10 years, and they're testing these wells all the time to see if they're still having methane in them. You know, the Cabot said they're committed to be responsible for their operation in Susquehanna County, and they're working with the Department of Environmental Resources to resolve any issues in the problem there. So, in essence, they're looking to see if there's any exceedance in pressures in the line itself. This is the one. This is the one that cause other issues. These are the two that probably raised the most ire of people. This was 19th of April this year. It's in Leroy Township, Leroy Township, Bradford County, which is just over the boundary of New York. And they were allegedly hydrofracking the well. The well head, or they either had a split in the pipe or the well head blew off. And if the well head blew off, that means that there was a lot more pressure in that well than any of the other, 2,866 wells or whatever is previous had in the system. So it did blow out. It did run across the property. They noted there was no adverse effects of the streams or the waterways over the Department of Environmental Protection is monitoring and taking samples. And the interesting thing is the next slide is the person's land was on was Mr. Morse. And EPA immediately, anytime there's been any contamination in a well in Pennsylvania, the Department of Environmental Protection has been there, taking water samples and running a significant amount of tests on those wells, okay? In every instance up to this point, they have not found any fracking fluid in the well water itself. Yes, they found methane in the well water, but they haven't found any fracking fluid. The interesting thing about this one is EPA, there was some, what can I say? Well, let's say the state of Pennsylvania went Republican, and the Environmental Protection Agency is kind of Democrat. So there was a great discussions between EPA Region 1, I think it was, out of Jersey, and the people in Pennsylvania, and it got a little bit heated. So when EPA heard that there was this problem in Leroy Township, they immediately sent their people from Jersey over to take water samples of the wells. They found out that there were either 6 or 7 wells that had, quote, contamination, unquote. And if you read this, the EPA and these people, Morses, knew that there were high levels of sodium in their well. And then there's some other filtration systems. But the thing is that EPA told the people, in essence, what the test found in their well. They won't release that information to the papers. Now, in my opinion, there's two reasons why this wouldn't take place. First of all of these wells were contaminated from the surface. That means that the wells that they have, and these are all drilled wells with steel casings, weren't cemented into the bedrock so you would get no surface water running into them. And what happened, most of the water which came out from the well was a brine. It's a very salty water. That's what into the well. If there would have been any fracking material in these wells, there's no doubt, as I say, in my opinion, that EPA would have said, see, we told you so, there's fracking water in these wells, and you guys have caused the same a lot of problems, but they haven't. So I'm waiting to see one of these people, if they have those results in hand, comes out and say, well, this is what they found in my well. EPA is going to be testing these wells again in August to see if there's anything there. Now we come to New York State, okay? Back 2010, Assembly Leader Sheldon Silver and Mr. Bob Sweeney announced the passage of legislation in the Assembly of Bill 11443B. There was a version sent of that bill called S8129B, and in essence what they were going to do is to place a moratorium on any hydraulic, any drilling for gas in New York State. That would have been significant because there are a lot of wells being drilled in New York State which aren't going into the Marcellus Shale. There's a significant number. So what our Governor Fabius did at that time, he vetoed those bills when he came to his desk, and he issued an executive order that there won't be any horizontal hydraulic fracturing until at least after July 1st, 2011. And in that process, the State Department of Environmental Conservation would have to write a supplemental draft environmental impact statement, which they did. It went out for review. They got hundreds of comments. They got like 900 comments. They had to go back review, had to rewrite it. It was supposed to be done by the 1st July this year. It is still not done by the 1st July. I've talked to the people I know in Albany. Governor Cuomo was trying to push it to get it out, but they want to make sure everything is there when they get done with it. But in essence, people were in the division of budget. Of course, people are always looking at money in the state of New York because we seem to spend money faster than anybody else in the world, no matter who it is running the place. Felt it would be about $315 million a year, which would go into the coffers of New York State. Probably over the period of time it'd be more like $9 billion for it. Now this is just a cross section of what we see for the different types of rock which we have here. This is if you look at the New York State map, this was kind of running kitty corner from just east of Norwich, going down toward Jamestown. So if you look at Cortland County, which is right here, you'll see that you got the upper levels are here, and here's the Marcellus here. Okay, this Marcellus is somewhat thick. It might be 150 feet thick, and it gets thicker as you go off to the east, and as you go west, you get as far as Steuben County, Elmira. The Marcellus pinches out over there. There is not much Marcellus at all over there. So the main is south. As you go south, it trends to go in the southwesterly direction. Just to give you some little background information, natural gas industry in the U.S. began in 1821 with a well completed by William Aaron Hart in the Upper Devonian Dunkirk Shale in Chautauqua County, which is in southwest of New York. The well supplied residents and businesses in Fredonia with natural gas for 37 years. And there were hundreds of shallow wells drilled the following years in shale along Lake Erie and then southeastward into western New York. The shale gas fields development spread into Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky. Gas was first produced in the Marcellus Shale in 1880 when the first well was completed in Naples, New York, in a field in Ontario County. Eventually, as other formations were explored, more productive conventional oil and natural gas fields were developed, and they forgot the Marcellus because it really didn't produce very much. The Department of Environmental Conservation has come out with a fact sheet about hydraulic fracturing in New York State and limits set forth. This is just kind of a basic information. No wells will be drilled within 2,000 feet of public water supply. On the state's 18 primary aquifers, it'll be 500 feet from their boundaries. Within 500 feet of any private wells unless waived by the landowner. There won't be any in floodplains. There won't be any in principal aquifers without site-specific reviews, and there won't be any in the Syracuse and New York City watersheds. The Syracuse watershed, in essence, is all of the water which flows into Skaneateles Lake. The well casings, in normal well casings, there are two casings which are drilled down. There's an outside casing, and then the inside casing is sent down, and that's where they do the hydrofracking from. In New York State, they're putting a third casing in, so that you'll have two outside casings before you get to the casing where there will be, if it ever takes place in New York State, will it be using hydrofracking fluid to go down the Marcellus to open it up. Flowback water, which I talked about previously, is the water comes back out of fracking. They've got a whole new system now, as I said, in Pennsylvania, which is a pre-treatment, which is going to be significant. They cut down on the number of gallons they use for hydrofracking. Any place that is to treat, which is a publicly owned water treatment plant, they have to have an industrial pre-treatment plant. There has been fracking water treated in the city of Watertown. It has been treated in the city of Auburn until that was voted down 3 weeks ago by the council. So there are very stringent things which are set forth if it ever takes place in New York State. They have to, every person that is hydrofracking, they have to give a list of all of the hydrofracking materials that they are going to use. The generic environmental impact statement noted there's 322 chemicals that could be used, but every person that is going to do high volume hydrofracking has to work with the Environmental Conservation Department to tell them exactly what's in there. Any chemicals in there, they have to look at those chemicals to see if there's any alternatives that they can use which may be less harmful. They have to protect the water quality, or the air quality, and the water quality, and they have to look at greenhouse gases because methane has been said to cause greenhouse gas problems, and so they want to cap the methane to make sure there's none lost, which makes good sense because why would a company that is drilling a well to produce natural gas to be burned allow it to get into the atmosphere? So it's a good thing to do. And the thing is, DEC says they want to make sure they get it right the first time because they don't want to have impacts on the community that have taken place in a few places in New York State, or in Pennsylvania, I should say. The New York State Department of Health, in the generic environmental impact statement, noted that A water sample is going to have to be taken from a well, which is going to be near any drilling site, a minimum of 6 months prior to when any drilling takes place, and they have to take samples at specific times after that point. When I first heard this, I was concerned because in talking to the health department, there are probably 35% of the wells that people have that in essence won't pass certain criteria of being potable water. One of those being any bacteria which may be in the well. But the health department came forth and said, what we're going to do is these are the parameters you have to test for. Barium chloride, which is means salt, conductivity, which means how much material is in that water, dissolved solids, alpha and beta ratios to see if there's any radioactivity in the wells, iron, manganese, dissolved methane and ethane, which are there previously, sodium, total dissolved solids, what the water level is in the well, and the volatile organic compounds which are in the well. And so this made me feel much better because if you had your well tested and it showed that you had coliform in your well, that means your well is not potable, the water in your well is not potable. And it could have a significant effect upon a sale price of your property if you ever wanted to do it. You might have to go ahead and drill a new well. The recommended sampling procedure is set forth here. They have to have a cold water faucet. You have to remove the faucet's aerator. You have to disinfect the faucet with Clorox probably. You let the water run 5 minutes in case there's a little bit of Clorox on the outside. After that time, you reduce the water to a small stream. You fill your container. You cap that container. You label the container, you put that in a cooler that has ice in it, and that is trucked off to a laboratory approved by the health department for testing. I talked before about one of the greatest problems is breaking down of roads. To the east of us in Madison County is the small town of Lebanon. It's at the southernmost county, well, you know where Hamilton is? It's south of Hamilton. There has been a lot of drilling taking place in the town of Lebanon over the last 7 or 8 years. They're drilling down into a formation where they have found a significant gas supply. They won't say what that formation is, but my assumption is one that's way down. It has it's not a shale. My assumption is a sandstone because the gas can move much more freely through a sandstone than it can through a shale. So what the town of Lebanon did, and there's only one company right now which is working there, and it's called Nornu Incorporated. Their subsidiary called Norse Pipeline LLC and Norse Energy Corporation. What the town did is to have a document signed by a member of the upper level people of this company that says if there's any problems with the road, they have to repair it. First, what Nornu has to do is put up a $30,000 bond. And then, if there's problems caused with the road, the highway superintendent goes out there, he looks at the road, he says, you've caused problems, this. It's up to you to repair them at this point, which it did. And talking to the supervisor of Lebanon about 4 weeks ago, he said this document has worked out very, very well. The roads are being repaired, and if they don't want to repair them, at least they have that $30,000 they can do the work on it, because usually they're fairly short sections of road. Nornu has to let the town know 10 days ahead of time when they're going to be there. They inspect the road, they take a video of the road, So to know exactly what that road looks like before Nornu and his trucks and suppliers and anybody ever gets on that. I thought this was significant. Last meeting I went down to Binghamton, the town of Dixon in Broome County also has one. So in essence, it's set up so that the process takes care of the roads so the town people do not have to pay for problems caused by all the trucks on the road. Good, thank you. I guess I went a long time. I apologize for that. Sandy told me half an hour. I apologize. We're all sweating here. Any questions, please? Yes?
Where does the water come from that they use for hydrofracking?
The water has, some of the water has been purchased from municipalities. Some of the water has been drawn out of ponds which are in the area. Other areas is that if a stream is acceptable to take water out with the state of Pennsylvania, they let them take some water out of Pennsylvania. But in New York State, there was just a new law passed and signed by the governor last week or week before last, which is a water withdrawal for all streams in New York State. And the limit, I think, on certain streams, 1 million gallons a day. The limit on other streams is only like 100,000 gallons per day. It depends on the order of where the stream is. So that, in essence, where they do their. And this group, I'm glad you asked that question. They're having a boom in South Dakota right now in oil, and they are using hydrofracking in releasing the oil from the shales and the sandstones they have there. There was one city that built a whole new $3 million water treatment facility and just to sell water to the hydrofracking business. They could pay for it in a very, very short period of time, and they only charge, I don't know, 25 cents a gallon or 25 cents 5 gallons. The cost is minimal. But when you have, 48,000 gallon trucks through your facility every day, that adds up in a hurry. Thank you for asking the question. Yes, ma'am.
How do you keep the water from leaching out of the wastewater ponds that are next to the road?
Any water which is in wastewater ponds has to be pumped out into trucks and taken to a treatment plant. That's how things were done before this summer started. But most all the companies now, Cabot and Chesapeake, Hess, are all going to this pre-treatment. They have like 6 huge tractor trailers on site, and as they pump the water out of the fracking water out of the well, is going directly into these for pre-treatment. So they're trying to do, the only pond, to speak, is for the drilling chips and any water they're using from the drilling chips. One of the first things that happened, one was built poorly, it failed, went into a poor regulated wetland. That never happened again, because the Corps really got on them. So at this point now, they're looking at, let's pre-treat this water, let's not put it into a pond. If you put it in a pond, there's always a chance for a problem, right? Engineers are not out there every day to make sure that when they compact the soil, they run the viper or tamper over it, 6-inch layers or 12-inch layers, These guys want to get the job done. So they just said, listen, to cut down on the amount of problems that may be caused, we're going to this new process. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
The exposure to town of Fabius residents. Sitting
The Marcellus shale is not far enough down to be a producer in the town of Fabius.
we don't have to worry about it.
No, that's not
But,
true.
now let me clarify that, all right?
Unless they come over from Marcellus.
No. Let's just say there are formations which are well below the Marcellus, which they probably do not have the ability to drill to now.
I'll be.
10,000? There's Utica, there's Queenston, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that are down there, which are natural gas, have natural gas in them. It depends on where you are, how much gas is in there. Marcellus is not very deep here in town, Fabius. But as you go south and then south and west, and east, it becomes deeper. The reason is, the sediments that were deposited in the Marcellus Shale wasn't in a flat area like many deposits take place. It was a trench, a very deep trench that these deposits went in. And the farther you go south, the deeper that trench gets. And that's, and that's why they're staying there. There's people drilling in Pennsylvania, West Virginia now, and in the tip of Virginia.
So we are sitting on some Marcellus.
Oh, undoubtedly.
Not very thick, not worth going after.
No, I mean, I doubt if, you have to have a thick enough formation in here. You may, if you look at the formation in Marcellus, it's probably 12 feet, and you need somewhere 80 to 100, better more like 150 in order to get the maximum amount of gas from it.
We have the same
Yes.
situation in the Artisco Lake watershed. We sit on Marcellus Shale, they won't come after, but they are coming after the Utica Shale. And just like Fabius is heavily leased, we're heavily leased, and so they are coming after.
Well, I haven't seen anybody look at the Utica Shale. That is what is in the future.
No, they are, because that was just at the presentation, and they said that Utica Shale is actually much more valuable than Marcellus.
Utica Shale doesn't have the amount of organics in it that the Utica, I know the Utica Shale. The Utica Shale is a producer. I don't think what they're doing in Lebanon is Utica Shale, but it could be. I know people talk about the Utica Shale. Utica Shale, first start in Utica, it slopes to the southeast direction and roughly 1 degree, which means every mile you go, it's if you go 1 degree, it's like, I don't know, every 100 miles, every 10 miles, it's 360 feet lower. But Utica, if you look at the elevation of Utica, where they founded Utica, it's lower, yes. And I don't know what the aerial extent is. I'd have to pull my map out from home and take a look at that. Yes, ma'am?
You've done an excellent job explaining the science, and I wonder if you could go back to what you described before as directional drilling.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
explain in a little more detail what that means in terms of boundary lines and property owners.
Oh, I'm glad you asked that question. What it means is that, I hope I wrote it for you. I may not have wrote it. And anyway, there is a law passed in 2005, which talked about the use of horizontal drilling in wells. And the name is comprehensive, it'll come to me maybe, that's my age gets me. But in essence, what it is that there's 3 levels of, how do I put this? There's 3 levels of owning, owning a well, okay? The first is the outright person that says, okay, you can drill on my property. They're primary. They do not have to pay a fee to do that because on their head. The second one is someone adjacent to. If they want to be part of it, they can pay part of it, but if they don't, they consider how much gas comes out from underneath in a well when you horizontal drill. Whatever that person has, after so much gas is sold out of that well, that person can get some remuneration. The third person is the person that lives over here, 4,000 feet or 3,000 feet. Didn't want anybody drilling on their property. Didn't want anything to do with the drilling process. And I'm sorry, I picked it up when I went to leave my desk, and I must have left it on my desk. I picked it up when I was in Binghamton, but what it is that even if you don't do anything, if the well is producing gas underneath your property, at a certain point, you look at the cost that it was done to get to that property, that cost will be subtracted by what is being produced, and then, at a certain point, that person will receive some royalties, remuneration from the gas itself. And I wish I had that with me so I could give you a very, very simple thing, and I only,
It's called compulsory integration.
Compulsory integration.
I think it bears a little bit of discussion for people in this room, because the law that you're referring to removes the right of a property owner to say that they cannot drill under your land.
that's correct.
I just think
I
it's,
agree with
I
you.
really want to make sure that that's clear, because whether it's Marcellus or Utica Shale or some
Whatever,
as yet
wherever there's
unnamed
oil
shale.
drilling could take place, yes, ma'am, absolutely correct.
And the fact that there are many leases now in effect in the town of Fabius indicates that the gas company wants something here.
Well, my question, I know, we did some, Bill Casey and I did some evaluation of who had signed agreements in the town of Fabius. Up until, it must have been somewhere in February, January, somewhere, there were only 2 entities that had signed drilling contracts.
You're talking
And now,
companies.
what, ma'am?
You're talking companies, 2 companies.
No, 2 landowners.
Well, there's
Now,
some-
since that time, there may have been other landowners which have signed, but at that point, there were only 2 landowners in the town of Fabius because a search was done to see what was there. Now, do you know some landowners that have signed?
Well, absolutely, quite a few more than 2. And if the deeds weren't properly recorded, or they were recorded under some other name, that would explain why it wasn't disclosed. But
Yeah, well, I can't delve into that a great deal because I have 14,000 other things that I do. But I know you're correct that even if you don't want somebody on your property, there may well be a horizontal line underneath your property. And that's as far as we go. Yes, ma'am.
But that law was passed in 2005.
Yes, ma'am.
New York State's the only one that passed a law like that. Pennsylvania does not have that. In Pennsylvania, every single person from whom they're getting the gas has to sign a lease. I mean, it's wrong for New York State.
Well, if you don't, the thing is, that's between you and your assemblyman and your senators.
That's right.
And I don't have anything to do with it. So if you want to complain about it, you get a hold of your senator and your assemblyman
Right.
and you tell them. Because, Vaughn,
Randy, how do you determine the amount that's being produced by these horizontal wells or horizontal lines if everything's coming out of one well?
well, as they frack them, they put these, what I call donuts in the thing, and they can leave those donuts in there and have recorders on them, my understanding, to know what the flow is through that area. That is the understanding of it. Now, I'm not sure if that's true, but I asked that question. That's the answer that I have. Yes?
What happens to the sand that gets taken out? And my second question is, are they measuring what gets left behind? Sand and chemicals that never comes out again? And something has to stay to keep the
Well, what stays in the well itself is the sand, the propellant. They flush that. They flush it after the material used for hydrofracking is done. They flush that back out. It is not. There's nothing. They don't want anything left in that well. They want it dry. They don't want any moisture in there whatsoever. So they draw all that. They flush it. They take that back out. So there's not. The only thing left when the hydrofracking is what material they use to spread the bedding planes. Yes, ma'am.
Is there anything done about the release of radiation because I'm afraid on the drilling process?
Well, the water supplies which are going to be taken by the health department are looking for both alpha and beta rays. My greatest concern with someone who has a house is that your cellar. I don't know if you've ever looked at your cellar and you bought those little things that you hang in your cellar to see how much radon is in your cellar. One of the problems that we have, I know in glaciated areas like Fabius, is that there are stones in that glacial outwash which do produce radon. In up north, where there is granite, where you have granite very close to the surface, you also have radon coming out of that. But they are going to test those wells prior to see if there's anything there, and then after any production takes place to see if there's anything there. Yeah, go ahead, man.
Should we pre-test our own water wells? I mean, is there a list of chemicals that we can pre-test for?
Well, I would say this, if you want to pre-test your wells, and I'm not sure where you live, there are certain criteria you go by. You go to a licensed laboratory by the New York State Department of Health.
Do they know what to test for?
You can talk, you may say to them, well, I want to test for herbicides, I want to test for pesticides, I want to test for whatever. It depends on, whatever you ask for, the price goes up, all right? But to find out what is in your well, you can ask for certain things. They'll give you a sterile container, you take that, you follow their directions, you take it back to them. I mean, I've had my well tested a number of times, I have a lot of sulfur, and I have iron, so.
Yeah, but what are the chemicals we should be looking for? I mean, I know
The
there's.
chemicals you look for, you would be looking probably for sodium and chloride salts. To just make sure that your septic tank is working well, you may want to look for coliform count. You may not want to know that. Some people don't want to know that because about 35, I said before, about 35% of the wells in New York State, they leak. The well casing itself is not driven and sealed into the bedrock, so surface water runs into that, and you never know what you get out of surface water. We've had instances in the North Country where, I hate to say this, but people have had some manure in their wells, and manure came in their wells because their wells were not sealed, and when you had 4 inches of rain, and you had manure 4 miles away up on the hill, it came down into your well. But, go to, you can go online and just check, what do I want to take? Just Google and say, what do I want to test for in my well? And they'll say, well, what are you looking for? And you say, well, I want this, and it'll give you a whole bunch of parameters. Okay? Yes, sir. John?
Don't worry about the well, we got radon going right up through the stone in the ground.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And,
That's where.
You can go to Lowe's and get tested.
Yeah, that's what I said. You'd be surprised if you get one of those little testers from Home Depot or Lowe's or whoever else is around. I'm not sure if Tully Building Supply is still there. They're probably done years ago. But maybe they're still there. Well, go there and get one, hang your cellar, and you'll find out. It'll test and let you know. Then you buy a much more expensive one, and you can do it over a time frame. It takes a certain. My next door neighbor's wife was saying, oh, we never tested this the last 40 years or 30 years we've lived in this house. And so, they hung 3 of them down cellar, and they go like, holy man, this is during the winter time. So they now have the 3 specialized ones to see what's there. So you had a question?
I'm interested in the companies that are using the portable water treatment plant and bill center. Are they able to process it enough so that what comes out of the final treatment is recycled, is reused in the...
Yes, absolutely correct. What is
They're
happening?
able to cut down on the quantity?
Yes, what they have stated up to this point, that they can recycle that water 4 times. Original plus 4. After that point, it has to go through a treatment plant in order to be taken care of. But they can, it's 5 total times that they can use water daily. Yes, ma'am?
Is that part of the New York law that they have to?
That would be part of what they go through, yes. They'll have to do recycling. That's one thing they're looking at, is to make reuse and recycle.
So we won't see any more of the lakes, the ponds? and-
You shouldn't see, you may find a few, but by and large, they're
So it's
looking.
not really law yet? It's
No,
something
we aren't
like
even,
decide.
I think we're still 6 months at least of where we're gonna be, where something will happen in New York State. Yes, ma'am?
I was wondering, I know you're retired from DEC, but talking to your buddies maybe, what are your thoughts about the ability or the willingness of DEC to be hiring more inspectors if this happens? Do you think they're going to? I mean, right now, they don't even have enough people to inspect the existing gas line.
Well, I was talking to Brad Field about 3 weeks ago. He's the head of mineral resources and gas in Albany. Brad said that there allegedly is an agreement with the governor that since this could be such an economically positive situation for the state of New York, that the governor is going to make sure that there will be people, enough people, and maybe more than enough people to do the inspections. They're not going to short on those inspections. We all have to see what happens. You know, the governor told the two big unions, CSEA and PEF, that this is what they negotiated. It hasn't gone out to the people out there in the field yet. So that's going to be an interesting thing to see if that's passed or not, because the governor is just going to say, well, you voted it down out the door, another 2,000 of you go, or 4,000 or whatever. This is an interesting governor. I worked under his father. He was a big enough pain in the posterior. But I've talked to a lot of people, and they said that this governor drives the whole system. There's nothing which takes place anymore unless it goes to what is called the second floor, and the second floor is the governor's office. This is a whole new realm of what's going on. So we're just going to see. Yes, sir?
In your opinion, how many inspectors are needed per well?
Per well site?
Yeah.
I would say that a person could probably, if there were wells within, let's say, a 20-mile radius, he could probably take care of 5, but I don't know. I don't know what DC is looking at.
So you're saying 1 for 5 wells?
Maybe. I don't know. That's just my surmise. I'll take one more question because I've run you guys way over. Yes, ma'am?
If your neighbor has a well on their property, how would we know if there was horizontal drilling?
They have to let you know. They have to let everybody know which direction you're going. See, the interesting thing about these wellheads is that generally you could go down and then go in one direction, but now we're looking at going down and going in 5 directions. So you have 5 laterals out there instead of 1. Dick, last question.
Yeah, Brad, you've dealt with you for a long time in the DEC.
That was a pain in the posterior, wasn't it?
Well, maybe you still are. My question is, where do you come in on this?
Where do I come in on this?
Yeah, if you're retired,
This is just for my own basic information. That's where I come in on it. I just, because I'm part of the chairman of the environmental committee for the New York State Chapter of American Fisheries Society, and I was told by my cohorts on that group that I better keep track of this. So I've gone to probably 10 to 12 meetings throughout New York State, into Pennsylvania, that have been held by EPA, by Broome County, by Tioga County, you name it, I've been to them. So the Association of Towns, that was the last one I just went to. So
well, there's so much money in this, it's got to happen, but just when and if we can,
yeah,
we can make enough noise, maybe we can get enough safeguards.
Yeah. Well, I would say, if your concerns are there, you contact your assemblyman and your senator. That's the only place to go. Nobody else does anything.
They already made the promise.
Thank you.
Randy, thank you.
Well, we learned a lot tonight, and thank you for coming with all that information. Folks, we've got some great refreshments over here, and we hang around, talk some. Maybe if you buttonhole Randy, you might learn some more things. But at any rate, this has been a very informative session.
Can I just make one comment? If anybody is interested in leasing their land, if they're approached by someone, I highly recommend you talk to a lawyer. You don't sign anything without talking to a lawyer. To make sure that you are in control of what happens to your land, because they're going to run over you. And there are people out there that advise people. So don't sign a lease without talking to somebody, and don't let them tell you, oh no, it's just a template, everybody signs this. Everybody has signed it and they're sorry they did. So if you're going to sign a lease, make sure you talk to a lawyer.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You know, some of us older landowners in town of Fabius did sign leases many, many years ago. I signed a lease 1969 or 70, before most of the people were born probably, with a company called Diversified Petroleum Corporation. In essence, what it was is that they would give you $1 for the lease and then they would pay you every year. The problem is they never paid me, and I made sure there was a re-entry clause in my document. I re-entered it, I threw them out, and I took it off. You know, it came out of being found when they went through the process in looking for my property in the court case.
Hello, John.
Enjoying the summer?
Well, I got turned up and I thought we don't want to screen it today. Finish on
Artifact, somebody will dig up their landfill someday and they'll wonder what this was. Billy.
That's chicken color.
Well, it's municipal. Gotta have cheap cars. Same deal. Well, I think half of theirs